Welcome back, Dr. Linda here. We're going to take a look at a different model, but still focusing on the head and take a look at some of the same muscles that we've already covered. So right here near the frontal bone is the frontalis or the frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis. If this showed up on a test and you had a choice, would you write frontalis or frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis? Obviously, it's a lot easier to write frontalis. But this other name, occipitofrontalis, tells you that there's going to be another muscle all the way on the occipital side. Going around the eye, orbicularis oculi. Now, remember I mentioned there are rhomboid minor, rhomboid major, teres minor, teres major. Now, where the zygomatic bone is, the cheekbone, we're going to see a zygomatic minor and a zygomatic major. Minors are always above majors. Even on the rhomboids, it was rhomboid minor, superior, and rhomboid major, inferior. With the zygomatic minor is superior, zygomatic major, inferior. Here's the orbicularis oris going all the way around the upper and lower lip. Here is the levator labii superioris. Whether we pointed here or here, levator labii superioris. Here is the mentalis near the chin. And here's our depressor anguli inferioris. Depressor anguli inferioris. Here's our depressor anguli oris. And then the one that runs straight back is the risorius. That's kind of like if you just pull the outer part of your lips back. Here's the parotid gland. This larger muscle is the masseter. And then deep where that circle was on the other picture, that's the trumpet muscle, the buccinator or buccinator. There's your sternocleidomastoid. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Again, here's the orbicularis oculi, and then around the lips, orbicularis oris. Mentalis for the chin. Here's your depressor labii inferioris. And then here's the levator labii superioris. Right here. And this one, levator labii superioris, also it's just a different division. You can see it's kind of going a little bit more to the nose right here. But if you said levator labii superioris here or here, you'd be correct. Okay, here's your minor and major. Here's the zygomatic bone. So here's the split. One's going this way, one's going this way. So you have your zygomaticus minor here and zygomaticus major here. There's your buccinator. Here's your masseter. There's your parotid gland. And then that would be where the circle is, where you have the trumpet muscle where it puffs out the cheek for the buccinator. Here's your depressor anguli oris. And from the side view, here is the auricularis. Here's the parotid gland. Here's your masseter. is your buccinator. Here's the risorius. Here's the levator labii superioris. And right here, kind of running this way, this would be the nasalis. The nasalis, this way, more horizontally here. There's your buccinator. Here's your sternocleidomastoid. And superficially, right, that's your trapezius, your upper trap is superficial. And if we were to dissect that and peel it away, remember the one that's just deep to it is called a splenius capitis. Splenius capitis. Okay, let's look here. These are numbered, which is nice because you could test yourself. So here, number 1, I like that they call it the frontalis instead of the frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis. Number 2, around the eye, orbicularis oculi. Number 6, going around the lips this way, orbicularis oris. Number 5, here, levator labii superioris, as well as this one here. And then 3 and 4 are going to be the minor and major. So number 3, zygomaticus minor. Number 4, zygomaticus major. Both of these are going to the zygomatic bone. Minors are always above majors. Number 7 down here is the mentalis. Number 9, that's the upper trapezius. And number 8 just shows the split or the 2 divisions of the SCM. The more medial one is the sternal division. And then this lateral one is the clavicular division. So sternocleidomastoid. Okay, from the side view, up here, number 1 is the frontalis. From the side view, number 2, orbicularis oculi. This would be the nasalis here. Number 3 would be the levator labii superioris. Then we have number 4 and number 5. 4 is the zygomaticus minor. Number 5 is the zygomaticus major. And then here in that little circle, that deep trumpet muscle is the buccinator. Number 7 is the masseter. Here's the parotid gland. Sternocleidomastoid. And then the upper fibers of the trapezius. This would be the auricularis. Look at it from the other view. Now this one is not the auricularis, right? Auricularis was above the ear. It's got a few divisions. This one's going to the mandible, so that's your temporalis. Number 3, that is your buccinator. There's no masseter here, right? Masseter has been cut away, so is the parotid gland. Here's the levator labii superioris. That's your mentalis. Here's the orbicularis oris. And right here would be the nasalis. Okay, I like this one. I like the neck here because it kind of shows from, let's say, posterior to anterior. So I have a pretty good eye here, so I can see that right here is a belly that's been cut. This has been cut away. That's the trapezius. The upper trapezius is cut. Now, 7, 8, and 9, these are the scalene sisters. And the scalene sisters are the anterior, middle, and posterior. So I've heard of these referred to as scalenius anterior, scalenius middle, and scalenius posticus. But I've also seen them called simply anterior, middle, and posterior scalenes. Anterior, middle, and posterior scalene. Posterior to the posterior scalene is a muscle that goes from the upper 4 cervical vertebrae, C1, C2, C3, C4, and it's going to insert onto the superior angle of the scapula. It's inserting to the superior angle of the scapula. And the muscle is going to elevate the scapula. Like if you say, I don't know, it's going to shrug your shoulders up. So this muscle here is called a levator scapula. And by its name, levator scapula, it sounds like elevator scapula. It's like it's going to elevate the scapula. So the trapezius is cut. Here is the levator scapula. Posterior scalene, middle scalene, anterior scalene, sternocleidomastoid in the front. Now, these scalenes are really important, clinically speaking, because there's a large group of nerves that are going to pierce between them, and it's called the brachial plexus. The brachial plexus is a group of nerves that comes out of the neck, goes down the shoulder, and all the way down the arm. And I've had swimmers on the swimming team that I've taken care of who, from rotating their neck and catching their breath out of water, these muscles here, the scalenes, are considered accessory respiratory muscles. Like when you're out of breath and you're huffing and puffing for air, it's the scalenes that can elevate the first 2 ribs to get more oxygen in. So these are accessory respiratory muscles, but they can also rotate the neck. So by rotating and breathing, those muscles can really hypertrophy, they can thicken up and compress the nerves that come out of the neck going into the arm, giving you pins and needles into the fingers. Okay, let's take a look at this torso model right here. Now, this is really nice. I like this model because you can see a little bit of the upper trapezius here. Here's the sternum. Here are the clavicles. Now we see pectoralis major. Pec major is going from the sternum, and it's going to all these upper ribs, and it's going to insert into the bicipital groove. Now we know why we did all the osteology, because now you can visualize the bicipital groove or the intertubercular groove. But that's where pec major inserts, right between the greater and lesser tubercle on the bicipital groove. Here's the anterior deltoid. Now, on the left side, or our reading right, which would be this person's left, we're taking pec major and we're cutting it. We're deflecting it or dissecting it, so that now we can see pec minor. Pec minor originates on ribs 3, 4, and 5. It originates on ribs 3, 4, and 5, and it inserts right here on the coracoid process of the scapula. So the origin is ribs 3, 4, 5, and it inserts where? On the coracoid process of the scapula. Coracoid process of the scapula. Okay, what else do we have? Let's look at the abdominal region. Running up and down is the rectus abdominis. Now we have these obliques. The external oblique is external. It is superficial. Look at the direction of the fibers. It would be like putting your hands in your pocket, the direction that your forearm would be if your hands are in your front pocket. That's the direction of the external abdominal oblique. If you look at the internal oblique, they run almost perpendicular. the fibers run perpendicular to one another. So the external oblique runs this way, and then we would have to deflect this back. The internal oblique would be going the other direction. They're perpendicular. The external oblique and internal oblique fibers run in opposite directions. Okay, let's look at the posterior torso. So here on the right-hand side, we could see the trapezius, right? A little bit tough with the green, but this is the trapezius, and we have different divisions of the trapezius, but you can see it clearly: upper fibers, middle fibers, and lower fibers of the traps. Now, the traps, or the trapezius, is a pretty long muscle. It actually starts up at the occiput, and it goes all the way down to T12. So it's a long muscle in its origin, and then it attaches pretty much everywhere onto the scapula. So the upper fibers, because the direction of the fibers run up and down, will elevate the scapula. The middle fibers run across, so it adducts the scapula. And the lower fibers go up and down, so it pulls the scapula down or depresses the scapula. And that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, the upper fibers and lower fibers would have to be antagonistic to one another. So if this elevates the scapula, this one would have to depress the scapula. Here you can see the posterior deltoid. Now we take the trapezius, we deflect it back, and that's where we see the splenius capitis, right here. That's the splenius capitis. Now, here is levator scapula. It goes from the superior angle of the scapula, goes all the way up in this direction. We could see it going here, and it is going to attach to C1, C2, C3, C4 transverse processes. The TPs, or transverse processes of C1 to C4. And the insertion is on the superior angle. Now, when the trapezius is deflected back, we could see what's deeper. There's rhomboid minor and rhomboid major. Rhomboid minor is C7 to T1 spinous process to the vertebral border. And then rhomboid major is T2 to T5 spinous process to the vertebral border of the scapula. Here's the spine of the scapula. Above it, supraspinatus. Below it, infraspinatus. These are two of the 4 rotator cuff muscles. When I do the shoulder, I'll get into more detail with the rotator cuff. Okay, with the trapezius deflected back, here's the erector spinae group. The erector spinae group keeps your spine nice and tall and erect. The widest muscle of the back, I just trained this morning at the gym, the lats, the latissimus dorsi. Now, the lats is a pretty wide muscle of the back. If you look at the origin, right up here, it's going to originate from the lower 6 thoracic vertebrae. It's going to originate on all the lumbar vertebrae. So you got lower 6 thoracic, all of the lumbar, the sacrum, the pelvis. That is a wide origin, and that's why the origin of the muscle is called the thoracolumbar aponeurosis. What is an aponeurosis? An aponeurosis just means it's a broad, flat tendon. It's a broad, flat tendon. Thoracolumbar aponeurosis. Thoracolumbar aponeurosis. That is the origin of the latissimus dorsi. And guess where the lats is going to insert? The lats are going to go up in this diagonal. They're going to go underneath that inferior angle of the scapula, and it's going to go to the front of the shoulder. It's going to insert at the similar location as pec major, and pec major inserted on the bicipital groove. So the lats, or the latissimus dorsi, it too inserts near the bicipital groove, which is in the front of the shoulder. And that's why the lats extend the arm. It's like pulling a lawnmower, trying to start a lawnmower. When your shoulder extends back like that, that's the action of the latissimus dorsi. But it can only do that because it's a muscle of the back, but it attaches to the shoulder in the front. So it's going to pull the shoulder or the humerus backwards, which is shoulder extension. And the lats can also adduct the arm, meaning it adducts, it brings it towards midline. If the arm is out to the side and the lats contract, it can pull your arm to midline, just like it can with pectoralis major. And the lats internally rotate the shoulder. They internally or medially rotate the shoulder. And that's why if you ever see bodybuilders, really powerful power lifters or bodybuilders, when they walk, sometimes people kind of say, well, they walk like a monkey or a gorilla because their arms and their hands are rotated inward. It's because their pectoralis major and their latissimus dorsi are so strong, it's medially rotating their arms so that when they walk, you see the back of their hand. Now, that's not healthy because the arm during the gait cycle, the arms should swing so that the thumb and the index finger are in the neutral position. If someone is walking and you can only see the backs of their hand like a monkey or gorilla, that's not a well-balanced muscular system. It means that the internal rotators or their medial rotators are much more powerful than the external rotators. And if the internal rotators of the shoulder are stronger than the external rotators, internal rotation wins and you get that rounded shoulder, gorilla type of gait. Okay. All right, let me see if we covered all of those there. We did. That. Okay, let me stop that recording here.